Hi, everyone. Thank you for starting to log in. We're going to wait a couple of minutes, let everyone get a chance to join. While you get situated and get your volume and everything set up, please know that we're going to use the Q&A and chat function. I think the chat function is set up, but please submit your questions throughout the entire presentation and throughout this entire webinar through that Q&A, and we'll make sure that we continue to address those. We will also be putting our email addresses and contact information in the chat and following up that way as well. So please utilize all of those functions throughout our webinar tonight. Again, we'll give a couple minutes, let a few extra people join, and then we'll get started. All right, we've started to slow down just a little bit. So we will go ahead and get started. So for everyone joining tonight, my name is Megan Baumgartner. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Fishers. So I oversee our economic development and development efforts throughout the city, but then I also oversee our planning and zoning team. So I have two very important people with me tonight who will do the majority of the speaking and explanations and be able to answer questions. Megan Vukasic, she is our Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Fishers, and then Jordan Willey, who is our Assistant Director of Economic Development. And really our goal for tonight, and just a quick recap, is to provide an update to our neighbors, to our nearby residents about the Fishers Event Center. For everyone who was able to join during our last meeting and last webinar, we shared that we would for sure follow up with everyone and provide updates. You may have seen our great event and groundbreaking last week out at the event center site. People are being mobilized out on the site. Grading is starting to begin. And so for sure wanted to be able to provide this update to our residents and again, allow you this opportunity to engage with us, answer any questions that you might have, see any concerns that are out in the community right now, and really just be there alongside you with this entire project. So again, I think our chat is open just so that we can all continue to track our Q&A. If you don't mind using that function and not just the chat function, that'll help us make sure that Megan, Jordan, and I are able to answer all of your questions appropriately. So with all of that, I will hand it over to Megan Vukasic, our Planning and Zoning Director.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So we mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, but just wanted to go over some of the meeting format features. ASL interpretation can be turned on via the interpretation feature, so that will be at the bottom of your screen. And then, as Megan mentioned, any questions can be asked via the Q&A feature. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on our public website, which is fishers.in.us. So my name is Megan Vukasic. I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Fishers. And I saw a question actually come through in the chat already about the zoning of this property. So this property was rezoned back in The fall of last year, there was a public hearing held at Plan Commission. I saw someone said that they didn't get notice for that. And if you want to contact me, I'll provide my email address in the chat. We can see where your property lies in relation to this property to see if you would have met those requirements to be legally noticed. But we also held a similar meeting in September of last year, and that recording is posted on our public website as well. So I think we had invited the same residents who were property owners at that time to that virtual town hall. But yes, the zoning for this property was approved, and what you see before you is the concept plan that was approved as a part of that rezone. So really what we're here to discuss tonight, this is an expansion of the Fishers District, and the first phase of this development is going to include the Fishers Event Center. So you can see that labeled here in the middle of the screen. And this includes not only the new event center, but also the associated parking lot and site improvements. So that would include the detention pond on the east side of the property, and then all of the landscaping and buffering that's going in as a part of this project. So since this rezone was approved in the fall, we have been working with our civil engineer on all of the site design and going through the proper permitting procedures. So that's really what my world is mostly involved in, not necessarily the fun stuff for the general public, but fun for me. So we have been working with Kimley Horn on this design. This is just a snapshot of an over 100-page document that includes all of the details of all of the infrastructure that's going in as a part of this project. So you can see it looks very similar to what the concept plan initially proposed. There's that detention pond on the east side of the property, the parking lot. This doesn't show the landscaping on this general site plan, but we do have a robust landscaping package as a part of this design. And I just pulled some quick numbers before the meeting. So 30% of the overall site is going to be preserved as open space. So that would be for that pond area or for the plaza area that is going to be in front of the event center. So that's just north of that main event center building I mentioned. And then also,
I'm sorry, Megan, one quick thing to jump in here. If you don't mind moving your cursor over where Chicken and Pickle is going, just to kind of orient everyone as well. Southeast of there, Megan. Yep, okay. That big one. So that is where Chicken and Pickle, the entertainment facility, is going to be going. So that came out last week. So just to show the different areas and things that are being activated within this space already, just wanted to share that with everyone here.
Yeah, great, thank you. So in addition to this event center, we're going to have amenities such as the open space and then additional restaurant and entertainment opportunities, as Megan mentioned. So those will continue to unfold as this site develops. And then additionally on the landscaping plan, we're still working through the final details of the landscaping, but I pulled together the numbers and within the berming, there's 190 plantings or trees specifically that are proposed as a part of that buffer, and that includes evergreens and non-evergreen trees. And then on the site itself, there are proposed to be over 300 tree plantings. So all in all, we're just under a total of 500 trees that will go in as a part of this project, which is great for all of the adjacent residents.
With that too, Megan, and I might be jumping ahead, but I'm seeing a couple of questions come through about the berming. For those who maybe weren't able to join or maybe are new property owners within this area, can you explain the berming that is committed to around this area?
Yeah, and I think I'll hand that one over. I can give a high level overview and then hand it off to Jordan. But
if that's later on, I just know that when we first had this, the meeting with residents, that was something that did come up and commitments were made there. So if it'll be addressed later, that I think we're good.
Okay, yeah, we're planning on discussing that later, but definitely something that came up as a part of that rezoning process and is a vital part of this site development. So all of the permitting has been approved at this point. As Megan mentioned, that we're already mobilizing the site. And so I am going to hand it over to Jordan Willey, who's the Assistant Director of Economic Development, to really talk about next steps now that we have gone through the permitting approvals.
Thank you. Actually, Megan, can you pull up that plan again?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so my role in this project is to kind of be the liaison between the residents of the adjacent neighborhoods and obviously the city and the construction manager that's on site. AECom Hunt will be the general contractor. The developer is Thompson Thrift. So I'm kind of the liaison between everybody regarding this project. So getting to the berm question, just starting off here real quick, the south border of the neighborhood or the neighborhoods, I should say, and the project site, and then the east side will all have a berm. That berm will consist of a fence on top of it to help with the privacy, as well as the tree plantings, to Megan's point as well. So with that, construction in regards to grading, which is soil stripping, kind of setting the perimeter of the property lines for the project site, have started. So it may not have seen too much grading this so far in the first few days, but definitely by the end of the week, you'll see a lot more production in that regards. And then our first priority for this project is to get the berms set up and start kind of being formed. That way it can help with the construction activity being differentiated between the neighborhoods and the project site. It's kind of a little bit of a dusty activity. So obviously we're using our different mitigation controls to limit the dust, but we just want to get that part of the project installed first as a priority. That way it's less invasive for the neighbors. But to do a quick overview of the project itself from a general contracting standpoint, as I mentioned, the general contractor is AECom Hunt. They are operating from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Those will be the construction hours. And if there's for any reason that there has to be a late night activity done or something in that effect, I do require Hunt to give me a 2 weeks notice. That way I can push that communication out to the neighbors. I don't foresee anything quite like that happening, but whatever it is, if it does happen, obviously that communication will be from me. And then for the timeline of events, this construction project's roughly 20 months long, so that'll take us towards the end of 2024 until it gets completed for the event center. And right now we are, like I said, just getting started, so it's still early in the project, but the berms will be, as Megan also mentioned, there's a little buffer zone between the neighboring property lines and when the berm actually starts. So we're still finalizing the final details of where the berms will actually go, because we're trying to shift the berms inadequate spacing. That way it's not right on top of the property lines for the neighbors. So that is still being finalized for some of those items.
One thing I want to jump in real fast, Jordan, about those berms. So during our previous town hall, and I have seen some questions come through about that. And again, that was in September. And we can follow up with Megan about that, about the noticing and how we communicated that with everyone before. Mm-hmm. But in particular for the berm, so I just wanted everyone to know on here that at that time we talked about a 14-foot tall difference. So along the east side of the property, I believe we're at a 6-foot tall berm. Again, Megan talked about the plantings, but then an 8-foot tall fence that's on top of that. And then on the south side of the property, it's an 8-foot tall berm with a 6-foot tall fence. So we wanted it to be consistently 14 feet around the entire perimeter for those residents. Based off of the setbacks and the drainage issues that were in some of these locations, we weren't able to get that full amount. But again, that commitment to those residents that we made before, and that's in the PUD for a 14-foot berm. That's what you can expect to see there. And again, construction starting on that. I believe Jordan had also reached out to all of the neighbors whose properties may have been impacted with some of the tree clearing. I'm seeing some comments and questions in there of maybe we didn't hit everybody. So we'll certainly address those at the end of all of this. But that is something that we, and in particular, Jordan is tracking as well.
Yep. And I did see some questions about debris or trash regarding the berm construction. So AECom Hunt is fully responsible for any trash that is created from the construction of the berms and just construction site in general. So if there's any trash that gets into the backyards of any of the residents, please reach out to me and I'll make sure to reach out to the Hunt team and make sure that they are cleaning up adequately. And then as far as the air quality, I do see that, I do understand that obviously children live in these neighborhoods. And that's where some of these mitigation tools, such as when we're moving dirt, they'll be spraying water to help limit the amount of dust that gets raised into the air and obviously over into the adjacent neighbors. So there are different tools that can be used to help kind of limit the amount of dust that is created.
So another thing, so Jordan, you mentioned that there's earthwork that's going on out there right now. Do you want to give just a quick overview of maybe like the next 30 to 60 days, what people can see in addition to the berm and kind of the schedule of what's next?
Yeah. So in the next month or two, in addition to the berms, because the berms will probably be created by that point, you'll see a lot of land clearing. Obviously, there's a lot of cropped remnants in the field. So you're going to see a lot of that get tilled up, a lot of grass striped. Trees will be coming down in order to create the full footprint of the project. So you'll see a lot of big pieces of equipment moving. Obviously, you'll hear some loud sounds, taking down the trees and things of that nature. So a lot happening in the first couple months has to do with getting the ground ready in order to start preparing for the building pad to obviously which the building sits on. So there's already quite a few pieces of equipment on site, so you'll see a lot of those just kind of running around all over and moving dirt. So it'll be a fun time for kids to watch.
Okay, we are having lots of questions come through, which is amazing. So maybe let's start at the beginning. So who owns the property? And there was also a question about who's Fisher's Swordfish LLC. That is an entity that's Thompson Thrift. So for those who were able to join the call in September, Thompson Thrift is our overall master developer for this. And the city entered into a land acquisition agreement with them. So essentially they own the property, but we are actively involved, and we being the city, myself in particular, are involved in the entire development and what happens around the event center. So Fisher's Swordfish LLC is an entity within Thompson Thrift. So they are the true owner of the property, but based off of our agreements with Thompson Thrift, the city is essentially the master, or we are and would be the landowner at the end of the day. Orient this map, Megan, to the crossroads of 106 in the 4 different areas. I don't know if while I maybe go to the next question, if you want to pull up just Google Maps to be able to show where we're at for all of this. And for everyone who's on here, we did share this with everyone within the Walnut Hills, Walnut Ridge, Delaware Crossing, and what was our fourth neighborhood?
I believe Summerfield.
Summerfield, yeah. So some of you may, and likely a lot of you received this and aren't immediately adjacent on there. So if you were a neighbor who didn't receive the full public notice or public hearing, planning and zoning, that's where that mandatory zoning and notification goes through, and Megan can follow up with you directly on that. But again, we wanted to share this update with all of the residents in all 4 of those neighborhoods.
Yeah, and we keep record of all of those mailings that went out. So if you are concerned that you didn't get notified and you should have, reach out directly to me. I believe my email is posted in the chat, and we have that documentation so we can go back and review that. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen here again. So just to orient everyone who's on the call. So we talked about 106th Street and Lantern. Here's that roundabout. The neighborhoods that were invited on this call tonight, as mentioned, are Summerfield, Delaware Crossing, Walnut Creek, and Walnut Hills. And then this square in the middle here is the proposed event center. And then the surrounding area are those site improvements. So where the parking lot is shown on that site plan. So hopefully that helps orient everyone on the call tonight.
Thank you, Megan. Will the debris left behind our fences from the stripping this week along the border be cleaned up? Jordan, so I think you mentioned this, it was generally about trash, but Hunt is responsible and their contractors for cleaning up any of the debris that they would have removed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you are a resident who has had some debris removed outside of your property line, or right along that property line, there are some questions about staking and surveyors coming out. Please follow up with Jordan directly. His email address is in the chat function, and he can make sure that we connect you, or we connect with the AECOM Hunt team to make sure that all of that gets cleaned up appropriately. Is the entrance street to Delaware Crossing off of 106th Street extending into this area? No. We heard adamantly from the first town hall meeting that residents in all of the adjoining neighborhoods didn't want any pedestrian access to this development, and nor did people want any sort of vehicular traffic going through neighborhoods. So Megan, if you zoom in on the Summerfield, there you go. Yep. So some of you can see where it says like Lisbon Lane. There you go. That small area, if you go to the south, Megan, that right of way that's shown right now, that was at one point in time when these neighborhoods were developed, contemplated as an extension of a road or some sort of trail network. None of that is being extended or incorporated into this. So for any residents in that area, there will be zero change. And again, for anyone along the property line, heard everyone loud and clear that there should not be any sort of pedestrian access to that as well. A question about where the trees will be planted. And there was a question also about where the trees will go, or where the trees will go, how big they'll be. Megan, maybe we can so for everyone on here, that landscaping plan is tied to our ILP. And so a lot of that's being finalized right now. But what we can commit to do is for sure send and post that landscaping plan along there. Again, the height of those trees, and Jordan or Megan, I don't know if you can speak to that. I know that we're talking about more mature trees, not little Charlie Brown Christmas trees. So either of you able to share more details on that?
I don't have the exact size of the trees going in. They will take a bit of time to mature, just with any tree planting. That's typical. But the size of those would be shown on the landscaping plan. And if anyone wants to take a look at that detailed landscaping plan once it's been approved, that's something that you can reach out to me directly as well. Any of those civil plans are available to review. So I'm happy to share those with anyone who's interested. It's quite a large file, so sometimes I can't email that, but I can extract certain sheets from that page to send them to you, or even schedule a meeting to sit down and review those together. Happy to do that.
I know that there was a question about how many or how the planting of those trees fits into the construction timeline. Jordan, I don't know if we have an idea on that, or Megan, what we typically see in the development process, if that's one of the last things that goes.
It is typically one of the last things that go. Jordan, I don't know for this project specifically if you have any additional details on when the landscaping is planned.
I would guess on caution of error side that it would be towards the end of the project next year, just because just the way the construction of events typically happens. You don't want the trees to die too early or anything to that regard. So
Right,
we
we don't
wanna
want them to be
plan-
impacted by the construction activity that's going on site. I think
Right.
that's typically why they go in at the last stage.
Yep.
So we had a question next about the detention pond and the runoff from the new development, and how that runoff from the properties from the south will be handled. So all of this is tied into this very, very large and extensive stormwater detention survey that we've done in engineering that's done with this. On our previous town hall, we had a lot of questions about the impacts to Walnut Ridge and to Walnut Hills, and some concerns about what this looks like. So the stormwater project actually takes the runoff and it goes into the pond to the north of here, or to the, it will go into the event center pond, but then drains into the existing large pond right off of USA Parkway that drains under 69 into Cheney Creek. And 3 years ago, we did some significant sewer and stormwater work that upsizes the capacity there. So with all of this project and with all of this development, we are actually improving the stormwater detention and the overall detention of this entire site. So the berms are being constructed in a way that there's no sort of detention issues or stormwater runoff issues with any of the neighbors. And again, flooding that might happen along the Cheney Creek or the creek just east of here within Walnut Hills and Walnut Ridge. We talked a lot about that, of how that's tied to a county creek and not tied into the stormwater system here. But again, if there are things that you're seeing happening throughout the construction or have concerns about it, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself, Megan, and Jordan, and we'll absolutely get the Hunt team and our engineering team involved. We had a question about the noise analysis. So there are noise ordinances in place throughout the entire city. We've made sure that that anybody who is using the event center, whether it's an event, hockey game, they do need to be able to adhere to that. And again, this is a learning process and an ongoing communication with our residents. And so we do anticipate, if there is something abnormal that we think would be happening, there's not going to be any sort of outdoor concerts or events happening that would then impact you as a neighbor and a resident. All of this will be self-contained within the event center. So again, the impact should be minimal, if at all, to the properties. But again, the commitment here is please reach out to us if you see anything. A question again about the handling property damage to the adjacent properties. All of that should be cleaned up and handled by Hunt. If something happened in the process of stripping, oh, I'm sorry, Walnut Ridge. Yes, Walnut Creek. I must be looking, I don't know what I'm, yes, when I say Walnut Ridge, I mean Walnut Creek. Thank you for correcting that. We anticipate that Hunt is responsible for any sort of damage incurred to that. So if you see property damage, again, there are, excuse me, there are things in place to prevent that from happening or to reconcile that if something were to occur. So please reach out to Jordan directly and we'll make sure that we get the right team involved in that. The landscaping plan, I know that we have an entire page set up for some of these communications. So I think it's an easy commitment on our side to be able to post that landscaping plan when it's complete. Megan, I feel like we can just pull that out of the construction set, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And we can get that posted, as you mentioned, as soon as it's finalized. So that way it's just accessible on the website.
Great. Will there be plantings on both sides of the fence? I think the majority of the plantings is going to be focused on the side facing our residents. But again, that landscaping plan is being finalized right now. So we can make sure when we post that on our website that we talk, it's very clear about here's how many plantings they are, what locations they're on. But again, our focus is on creating that buffer for our residents and not about people who are going to the event center. And so that is the focus on our side.
Yeah, and those plantings are also, a majority are evergreen. So that way year round, they provide that foliage and buffer.
A copy of this map to download, we can again on our website, and Megan or Jordan, can one of you post in the chat function our event center landing page where we had the previous town hall. And again, maybe we can put this engineered site plan on there, but the overall concept plan is on there as well. Same for our next question. All right. There are surveyor stakes just outside of the fence line in Delaware Crossing. Do those stakes indicate the actual property line? If so, will the dirt work include removing trees and stumps that are outside of that fence line? Jordan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the stakes are the property line for the event center. Now, as far as the tree limbs or stumps that are outside that property line, which I'm guessing you mean more to the south, towards the neighborhood. In some cases, there are some tree branches that we will have to trim back in order to get the proper machine equipment back there, the proper amount of dirt filled for the berm. But we have already contacted the specific residents to where we may have to take a tree out, which it's only in regards to 2 residents. So trees should not just be coming out of the ground in order to build the berm. So in that case, anything within the Fishers Event Center property line, obviously we'll get rid of, but if it's outside that property line, unless it's in the way of getting the berm constructed, more than likely the tree limbs or stumps will remain where they are.
Thank you. Sorry, I was starting to go through this. Along the black fence, Delaware Crossing, they put down the black plastic guards today. I'm guessing, Jordan, that's just kind of the silt fence and the construction fencing.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Okay.
My understanding of that question.
A statement. There has been very little communication to this point. None of our neighbors were notified about tree removal, and neither were we. They just came through and cleared it out. So this is where this surveying and staking comes from. So there are, and Jordan and Elliot Holgren, our deputy mayor, AECOM Hunt, our engineering team, went out and walked the site and looked at what areas have berm or have existing vegetation and trees and bushes that were within the city's and now the event center's property boundaries to see what could be maintained before getting to that berm. So if you feel that there was something done incorrectly on your property or concerned about the impacts of any of that tree clearing or brush clearing, please contact Jordan and we can get in on that. On the communication front, it's always hard, but we did a huge rollout of all of this in September. Megan mentioned it, that we had over 100 residents who joined the first town hall meeting. Very similar, or the exact same communication technique and rollout was provided at that time. So happy to communicate that with you, share what that looks like more on a one-on-one conversation. So if you have questions about that in particular, reach out to me in particular, and Megan and I can follow up with you on that. Question, I saw a couple of these about walking paths. Excuse me, and a question about, well, when did the vote happen of not wanting pedestrian access? During that last town hall meeting, we shared that if the neighbors collectively could come together and say that they wanted an access point, the city would work with everyone on that. We were never contacted by an HOA saying that there was consensus. And so that's where we've landed right now, that there's no desired, that the HOAs have said, because no one is engaged with us, that there is not a neighborhood desire for an access point. I just saw something come through in the chat of, is this still an option? It's possible, but we need to know pretty quickly. And really, again, that would need to come from the board. So please follow up with Megan and myself and Jordan after all of this, and we can talk to you about that. Somebody's always going to be mad about if they don't have access or if they do. So wanting to make sure that we address all of those concerns for sure. How's the communication managed? So, oh, great. There's a Delaware Crossing HOA meeting tomorrow. So maybe there's some good things that come out of that. The communication is managed through our community engagement and public relations team. We can send you again directly. And Megan, I don't know if you can see in the chat, the individual who is asking about that, the link to our page. And again, the link to all the information that was rolled out. In September, we did a 30 to 45 day rollout of all of this. So neighbors, adjacent neighbors were contacted again directly about this and in those neighborhoods for this, the initial conversation. So if you still have questions about that, please reach out to us.
And I did post that web address in the chat. So
Perfect.
It should be the same web address that you were mailed on the most recent letter to access this meeting.
Thank you. Question on the anticipated number of stories for the event center. So again, information on that and the renderings of it is on that website that Megan posted, but it's essentially a three-story building. And so we wanted to make sure that this wasn't this huge imposing building in the middle of this development, and it was again sensitive to everything around it. So the renderings that are on the website that Megan posted, those are accurate. And again, we think it's for the scale of it and what things will be able to be achieved inside of it, is a minimal height impact on all of that. Question about assurances providing or regarding structural damage to nearby homes. Slab shifting, that's something, Jordan, you'll have to, if for anyone who has that question, following up with Jordan on that, and to get with AECOM and our team, I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Yeah, I feel like our civil engineers would be able to provide some more technical expertise on the structural impact to the surrounding homes from the site design. So we can,
Right.
if someone has questions, feel free to follow up with me and I can put you in touch with our civil engineer.
And Megan, do you mind pulling back up the site plan on your screen?
Yes.
Do you have the concept rendering one that's a little bit easier to see everything? Perfect. There we go. So on this detention pond, and the latest version actually has the detention pond kind of bumping out a bit more because, again, based off of these larger issues about stormwater detention on the site. But on the deterring mosquitoes, and there was a question also about what was it, a fountain on all of that. I don't know, Megan or Jordan, I don't know the answer on that one. Can either of you speak to it?
I don't believe there's a fountain proposed for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It doesn't include one.
Okay. Yeah. And again, we can follow up with our stormwater team. They're very thorough about how all of that's done. The great thing is, though, that our health department, which is now within the city of Fishers, does the monitoring of mosquitoes and all of that testing. So we do have our own team that can make sure if we do perceive a problem. Again, a broken record, reach out to Jordan in particular, and we can get that team engaged. So again, a question, I think we addressed this earlier about who owns the property. The ownership group is Fisher's Swordfish LLC, which is an entity of Thompson Thrift. But based off of our agreements with Thompson Thrift, the city will be the eventual landowner of all of that. We will own and do own the building pad itself, and are ultimately in control of the entire development around there. Large building to the north of the event center, are they restaurants? So what's under construction right now is the Slate at Fisher's District. So there's our for rent multifamily, so villas, townhomes, and duplexes. North of that, which is Forum Credit Union, that building has been there since the 90s. The area immediately north of that is called the Union Development, and that's truly the extension and a duplicate essentially of Fisher's District. So we, the only things that I think that are under construction right now are the villas, or I'm sorry, the Slate with those for rent multifamily. Same question on the plastic guards on the south side of the property. Jordan, to confirm, if we have our construction fencing and the silt fencing up, no work can occur outside of that fencing.
Correct. So, for that question, reach out to me directly and I can set up a meeting with the hunt team and we can come out to your property and take a look at what your concern is.
Thank you, Jordan. Why did you choose this place for the event center among our neighborhoods? So for us, this really is an extension of Fisher's District and all of the entertainment options, activity that's in here. And it's in a really unique location. It provides, this property in particular is tucked back in that corner. And so we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that it was located where it's not going to negatively impact any adjacent neighbors. But those who are closest to it, that's again where our commitment to that 14-foot fence or 14-foot fence and berm, that we do everything that we can to make sure that you're not negatively impacted. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about the vision of Fisher's District in this entire area, please reach out to me in particular. Would love to talk to you a little bit more about all that. 2 questions about if we want pedestrian access. It looks like the Delaware Crossing board meeting tomorrow could be a little sporty. So we will wait to hear from the board in particular on any direction on that. So we will wait on that part. Any idea if it's expected to increase or decrease property value in the immediate area for homeowners? We've looked at this a lot regarding redevelopment happening in our nickel plate district and have done a lot of analysis around, especially and in particular multifamily. And what's incredible is that adding density and adding amenities nearby really does drive up property values and homeowner or home values in particular. So we do see this as another amenity. If you're a current homeowner there and someday decide to sell and move on to your next residence, I do think that the next and a lot of the current property owners do, especially the next group, will see this as an amenity nearby and something that they get to walk to. So anecdotally, and compared to a lot of our other redevelopments, I do feel confident saying that it should increase your property values, but I would like to think I'm smart enough to read a magic ball, but can't guarantee that one. From a city permit perspective, will we be able to remove the current farm fence and replace with a privacy fence? Jordan, anything on that one, or maybe follow up on it?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with that one. I'm not too positive of that answer.
Okay. I think it would probably just depend on whose property that current fence is on.
Correct.
And what happens to it. But again, I think for all of the start of the berm, so again, for everyone who's on here is adjacent to it, we talked about the height of that. Obviously, there's a slope and a grade that has to happen for that. And I think, Jordan, didn't we get to 10 feet away from any property line on most of those before the berm, before the like the slow grade of the berm starts.
Yeah, so there's a buffer. You can call it a buffer zone if you want. That, to Megan's point, the toe of the berm will start to slope. And even to that, we are still working to see if we can shift it a little more just to give a little more room for the residents.
On the berm, if the trees die, the city would be responsible for replacing and maintaining those trees. So we are responsible for maintaining the berms and the landscaping and everything around that. So that would be on us. To confirm, yes, Indy Fuel is going to be playing all of their home games at the facility. So this is the new home of the Indy Fuel. They will start playing their first home games in this facility in December of 24. The commitment from Hunt is that this thing opens November 19th, I think 2024 is when they deliver it to the city. So Jim Hallett, who's the owner of Indy Fuel, an incredible advocate within our community. He is starting to put together that schedule. So they're postponing the first half of their season and having all of their games be away essentially, so that then once this facility opens, they begin to play those games at home. But super, super excited to have them as our main tenant in the building. So we talked about noise for the patrons in the parking lot. That's a great question about broader security and the use of the parking lot. So we have hired an operator and manager for the event center and the parking lot. ASM Global is who we have hired for all of this. So they're going through an entire traffic study, traffic plan right now, talking about how we can bring traffic in and out correctly. We do have, there's a question later I saw in the Q&A about our traffic study. That's also posted on our website and the link that Megan had provided, providing the engineers traffic study for this entire area. So we do anticipate with ASM on board that we'll begin to refine some of those processes and make sure, again, there's minimal impact to our adjacent neighbors, but then it's also a convenient and great experience for people who are attending events at the event center. Nobody wants to go to an event or a hockey game and know that you have to sit in traffic for 2 hours afterwards. So trying to make sure that we streamline all of that and are very cognizant about it. Okay, will access to the parking lot be restricted and closed when no event is in progress? So this is a great question. So the big areas to the northeast, Megan, yep, and south of there, and then a lot of, yep, perfect. Man, Megan is great. All of those areas will be restricted during non-event times. Some of those areas might be utilized for chicken and pickle. Again, they're right along the in front of the event center. So we do anticipate a minimal amount of parking, but we really do want to make sure that this is an area that is a place for people to just come and park their cars or semi trucks to come and spend overnight. And so we're looking and working with our internal high threat security team, which is a joint task force between our fire department and our police department that looks at buildings and security from an overall threat perspective. And that, of course, then does include parking lot security. So those are things that we're very, very actively looking at and making sure that we're putting things in place that make this a safe area. Okay, I saw something about trees and stumps on the side of the project. If you can follow up with Jordan on that one, he will be the right one to be able to get those answers for you. They put a colored flag, a pink colored flag and an orange flag against the fence line. I'm guessing that those are utility locates, but if you can reach out to Jordan, he can go out there and take a look and confirm what those flags mean. But typically those flags are associated with utility locates. Clearing of debris, again, that should all be a Comm Hunt and their contractors, please reach out to Jordan on that one. You wrote, again, the path. Hopefully everybody can reach out to their board on that one. And we'll let you guys sort all that out on your side. This is a great question. So timeline of the rest of the development. So like we mentioned, Chicken and Pickle is committed. They plan to try and open around the same time as the event center. But then all of those other white blocks, that's just like a conceptual site plan. But we do anticipate trying to encourage and bring new development in that area within the next, really have it built out in the next 5 to 7 years. That's always dependent upon users, market demand, what sort of tenants are coming in. So my goal is that we do it in a really thoughtful way that stays true to our vision, but do it in a time frame that then it's not a constant stream of construction in this area as well. So it's no hard commitment on that one, but that's my goal on that. Walking and bike path along USA Parkway. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so there is going to be a couple of pedestrian access points that are going to be through this site, but then also along USA Parkway. So we are working with the Forum Event Center, and we'll be putting in a path along USA Parkway in front of this development, but that also extends and will connect to the current Fishers District, the yard development. And then we are also working with Thompson Thrift to install a pedestrian network through the slate at Fishers District, which is the project that's under construction right now, to add an additional pedestrian access point that's connecting this event center to the yard at Fishers District project.
There's a question about who owns the property along Delaware Park. So there's a small area, if you look on GIS, that shows the Delaware Park, or maybe it's Summerfield, that owns part of that area. But the main area is the Fishers. It's the city of Fishers as part of like a general road right away. Again, that's never going to be built out. We're not including any sort of road infrastructure there. We had talked about the potential of, if there was broad interest by all of the HOAs, to include some sort of pedestrian access point there. But we had heard that that wasn't a desire. Again, if HOAs meet soon and are able to communicate that differently, that right of way is in place. Teenager deterrent from hanging out in the pond. What are we putting around that, Megan? Are there any sort of bollards or anything contemplated for right now? I do know that the overall security of this, I mean, this would be an area that we monitor.
Yeah, I don't think there's any structural barriers around the pond other than the fencing that's going to be included in the berm. Any future plans to develop the field of property to the west of Summerfield? So that, Megan, if you don't mind switching to that GIS map. So for those on here who might not be familiar with it. There you go. So that property is still owned by Sunbeam, who's the developer who we purchased this property from. They own some of those remaining areas of development or developable land. There's no plans right now. I haven't heard anything from them. They move very slowly. And so eventually I assume that will develop, but there's nothing imminent. The really only major change is on the north side there. What used to be Navient is now owned by, or was Sally Mae now, or most recently was Navient, is now owned by a group called Wilco, MJ Wilco, and they have a local general management team and trying to turn that property and breathe some new life into it. But that's really the only big thing that I anticipate happening in that area. Yeah, and any future development on the soul, if it's not single family residential, which I think it would be zoned to allow additional uses, we would require buffering against those residences and any future development there. So if and when that does develop, similar buffering will be required between those residences.
So someone shared that they had missed the beginning and asking about the amenities that are in there. Megan, I don't know if, can you switch back again to the pretty site plan of that? So this entire event center is an 8,500 seat arena and event center. So the Indy Fuel is our primary tenant in that space. But we've contracted and I've hired ASM Global to be our operator and manager of the facility. So they're working with the Live Nations, the Ticketmasters, and trying to bring in world-class acts to that. The area just northwest of there, that plaza area, that's about a 2-acre plaza space where we see people being able to activate that before and or primarily before events. Just south of that is Chicken and Pickle, which is a nationwide pickleball, but focus on like culinary and bar restaurant atmosphere. So they announced last Wednesday their intent to build on this location, one of their new facilities. And then our goal with Thompson Thrift, who is our master developer for this entire site, is to create, again, this great energy and feel of Fishers District. So that this is an area that's activated all the time and not just when we have these events. But the goal is that we are able to bring community events into this space. So HSC graduations, Fishers High School graduations, we've never been able to graduate our students within the city. So that's super exciting. So being able to host community events is something that's important and a focus of for us as well. Parking lot near homes. So the intention is that these are only motion activated parking lights. And so in the landscaping plan, there's also, as part of this review process, there's a, what is it called, Megan? The candle.
The foot candle.
The foot candle, thank you. Showing how far that light can be seen. So there's standard ordinance requirements that we have with that. But again, we didn't want this to just be, even if the lights aren't shining onto properties and can't be, aren't shining onto properties, we didn't just want them all on all the time. So we're excited from an energy efficiency perspective, but then also from a security perspective that these will be motion activated. And so the parking lot lights, again, should be minimal, but they will have to adhere to our development ordinance about that candle footprint of how far that stream, or how far that reaches. And again, we can put that on there.
Yeah, and we've reviewed that lighting plan. So they provided those details and we verified that it's going to be a 0-foot candle rating at all of, at the boundary of that south property line and the east property line. So there should be no light spillover for these adjacent residents.
So we talked about the parking lot lighting. Does the city of Fishers allow e-scooters that are all over downtown Indy? No, we do not. There have been lots of conversations about these scooters, about golf carts in this area. And again, a lot of that would have to be done in concert with our neighborhoods. But from a safety and traffic perspective, that's never been something that we felt was viable or safe for the users of those scooters or for our drivers on our roads. So as of right now, that wouldn't happen. But again, if it does, that would be a much larger conversation down there. So the rail farm fence that currently runs along the length of the south property, as of right now, Jordan, does that remain?
Yeah, so right now that's kind of that's considered the residence property line, and that's what the event center backs up to.
So the fence will stay. Again, we have that 10-foot buffer before then the sloping of the berm goes up.
Correct.
Okay. Ooh, this is a great question, Megan. Are there any plans for public EV chargers to be located at the event center?
Yes, so we are planning on installing EV charging stations as a part of this development. I can't remember how many. I want to say 30. Don't hold me to that. I know this is being recorded, so you'll be able to. But there are EV charging stations, and we're very excited to have those in place with this development.
Yes. The southwest berm appears to end before the parking lot ends. I believe that is correct, but then it's because it bumps up to that existing pond, and then is not adjacent to any neighbors. So that's where that would kind of tie off from it. Mowing of the berm, again, the maintenance of all that's going to be our public works team. And I know that Angela, our ASL interpreter, has to jump off in a little bit, so I want to make sure I run through these real fast. Pedestrian access, would we see increased vehicular traffic and parking? These are all really great questions that I think that the HOAs would then need to discuss. Obviously, our team and our police officers, if we did put a pedestrian access point through there, we would work with you on that. But that's a little bit hard to address right now. Plans for a sidewalk or pathway along Cumberland Road. Megan, can you post the Cumberland Road engineering? I think we have a page or a link up on that of that capital improvement plan. But we can share that because I do believe sidewalks are anticipated as part of that widening project.
They are, and I will post a link to our capital projects dashboard. I will have to stop sharing my screen though, so I can go grab that link real quick. Some concerns about the wildlife. So we have to require, or we have to adhere to all IDEM. So IDEM is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, and then the Department of Natural Resources, DNR. They have specifications in place about how we make sure that we don't disrupt natural habitats in prime times of those of that animal or wildlife. So we're adhering to all of those things. And so making sure that we're cognizant of all that. Parking spaces planned, that number is still a bit in flux, but I think we're right around 2,300 to maybe 2,500 parking spots. Is the tree line and landscaping along the neighborhoods expected to help with privacy? We do believe so, based off of, again, that 14-foot total height. And then again, adding that those trees that will eventually continue to grow. That is our goal there for sure. And the berm going in now and planting not until mid to late 2024. We'll follow up on all of that again with the dust and the construction maintenance of all of that. Excuse me, and put that on the website along with our landscaping plan. Yeah, and I will add that we have stormwater pollution prevention plans that are in place. And so any dust and erosion is a part of those proactive measures to keep down dust and erosion.
Well, I'm trying to make sure that we went through, Megan and Jordan, anything that we missed.
No, but I'm going to share my screen one last time because I have a final slide here that I just want to share with our contact information. So if we didn't answer any questions that you had tonight, feel free to reach out to Jordan and myself. I think we've mentioned that several times. We are here as a resource for you. And I also have the QR code up that was included in the letter that you received. So if you would like to sign up to receive email updates as construction progresses, please go ahead and use that QR code, and that will take you to a form where you can enter in your email address. So that way we can make sure that we can follow up with you appropriately.
So going forward, about the farm fence, we'll have to follow up with you on that. If you can contact Jordan about that piece of it, want to make sure that we answer all of that correctly. But again, our commitment here to all of our residents is that Megan, myself, and Jordan are your main points of contact. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And again, any concerns, questions about anything along and throughout this process, this really is a community project, and we're so excited about bringing the community into this space. So please let us know what you're seeing out there. Your feedback is so important, and we really, really value your time tonight. So thank you for spending some time with us this evening, and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.